Sorry for that. There was a bit of a blur in the recording, so we kind of already halfway the warm up. So let's just continue where we left it. Okay. Hips down. Hips up. Hips down. Hips up. Hips down. And hips up. And spine up. Circles. Away. And circles the other way. So, bend your legs side to side. Opening one side. Opening the other side. Goes up one side. Goes up the other side. Hands in front, one side. Hands in front, the other side. And again. And again. So, it's open the legs, that goes down. And forward. And back stretch. Forward again. Hips up. Hips down. Hips up. Hips down. Hips up. Hips down. And back. Hey, one side. Change. This side. Change. Side. Change. Side, side. So, breathing in. Breathing out. You go. Sankyo. Go. Hey, that's right. Hey, that. And Ushiro Ukemi, but into shin box. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Next one with extension. 1, standing. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And you go. So during last week we had our seminar. So we're going to touch on a few things about the seminar on this class. But for example, on the first session of the seminar, the Friday morning class, we was about ukemi and what else? And kokyu. So we did a lot of kokyu exercises, and also ukemi was. But yes, part of ukemi was the idea of receiving. Obviously not only receiving in alignment with my partner, but also being able to receive my own body at the beginning of the training, hence all the warming up and things like that exercises. An important element of receiving, okay, is the concept of alignment, and that's why that becomes really relevant when you're training with a partner. To always maintain good alignment with your partner, horizontally, vertical, etc. But also your personal alignment. So there's a little sequence. As you know, we have the strength and conditioning program that James Valentine kindly put together for us, and there are many exercises in there that I like. But there's a little sequence that I like in particular, which is skated jump and stick. That's how it's called. So basically, you start on one side, okay, of a mat, then you jump to the other side, and you basically stick the landing on that foot. So we're going to do that. There's 3 variations on that one, which we will do. It's good because not only works on the not so much there's an element of balance, but more important, there's an element of alignment between your ankle, your knee, and your hip, to kind of be able to stand up on one knee, on one foot, sorry. Obviously, if you jump to the other side, that element of alignment gets tested by the landing action. So depending how you are, you just want to start with little jumps, okay, just enough to kind of make the landing, comfortable and safe. I, for example, jump at least one mat. So I start on one side of one mat, and then I make sure to land on the other side of the mat. So we're just going to start with basic jump and landing. Okay, so let's just do a few, and then I'll explain a few things about the exercise as well. Okay, ready? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, so that's the basic set of the exercise. As I say, because you are creating force from one side to the other, you need to stick the landing, and in that landing, the alignment of your ankle, knee, and hip, it's a little bit tested. So you have to kind of pay attention to that. You can do the movement as little as necessary, and start very narrow, or you can make it a bit really wide. The other thing about this exercise is the synchronicity of upper body and lower body, because you could be doing things with the lower body. Let's say upper body is not doing anything, just kind of somehow keeping the hands to not fall in kind of that way of basic balance, as in don't fall. Or the upper body should participate in the dynamics of the lower body. So in that case, the same leg that you raise is the same hand that you have in front. The other hand goes to the back, and then change and it's opposite direction. Change and it's opposite direction. We'd like to use your upper body not only as I don't know where to put my hands, or let's use them just not to fall. Try to use them in a way that aids the motor element of the exercise. Okay, so now the second version, the first version is only jump and land, jump and land. The second version has a jump and landing and a little jump. It's 1, 2, and then the other side, 1, 2. Okay, so it's going to be a landing and a little jump and a second landing. Okay, so jump, land, second little jump, land. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, so that's the second version. So the first version is just jump and land, then jump and land, and then an extra little jump, two little jumps. And then the third one, which I also like, is the one where you add an explosive movement. So basically it goes here, land, jump, and explode down. Okay, so it's going to be a quad jump in this. So jump, land, up, down, change. Jump, land, jump, down, change, and so on. So the second one has the element of explosiveness. One thing that is important in the training, as we've been saying, is that Kokyu Ho is pretty universal, as universal as these things can be. correct way of breathing for a human involves the use of the nose. Most humans have one. Okay. The use of the diaphragm. Most humans have one. Okay. And the rhythm of the breathing. Most humans need to inhale and exhale. So those things are reasonably universal. But then Kokyu-dosa, which is the rhythm of breathing through activities, is very specific. That one is not universal, that one is specific. That's why when you train for running, you get into a rhythm. For swimming, there is a rhythm. For yoga, there is a rhythm, etc. For Aikido, there is a rhythm. And the rhythm of Aikido specifically has these outburst moments of explosivity. You know, you enter, you control, you grab, and then you project the technique. You enter, control. It has those moments of explosive nature of martial arts in a sense. It's not only Aikido, but explosive nature of some martial arts. So it's good to explore that explosive nature physically and respiratorily with exercises that do that. So this one, because it's really good for that. You land, you forward alignment, you come down, you explode, you come down, and then you change. So that explosive moment reflects a little bit the need of a sudden burst of physical and respiratory energy, more similar to the Aikido pattern than going for a run or doing some yoga. It's wonderful, but does not mimic the explosive nature of the Aikido pattern. Okay, so jump, land, squat, explosive squat, jump, squat. Okay, and repeat. Ready? Goes one, so two, three, four, five, six, seven, eight, nine, 10, and so on. Okay, so that is a little set of exercises on that are um, on the strength and conditioning program, and they're very good because they challenge specific things. You know, I have memories of people doing not very nice ankle twisting things when training Aikido. The classic pain on the sides of the knees, which is usually cross-lateral ligaments not being properly trained, to receive the loading, that happens with some Aikido movements. And then obviously our always work in progress element of conditioning, which has to do partially with our age, partially with our physical characteristics, partially with our personal physical conditions, but also with how much are we familiar, our body is familiar with activities that have similar demands in terms of explosivity and in terms of rhythm. So thankfully, the conditioning program takes some consideration into that and is helpful to keep the body in a little bit of some of those rhythms, even when we are not on the mat. Okay, so please check it out if you have time, if you haven't done so, because is the way that we minimize injuries, apart from, let's say, improving your Aikido, but most importantly, you minimize injuries. As James Valentine says, you don't have an injury problem, you have a loading problem. The body doesn't know how to load particular weight transfer from one place to the other. When the body doesn't know how to do that, it freaks out, and sometimes when it freaks out, it gets injured. So now I keep working with that. So the other thing that we're going to do now is to practice a couple of things that with this whole week we've been reviewing things that were important as part of the grading process. In the grading, obviously there is the display of the basic techniques. We never really get enough time to talk about techniques like Sankyo and Yonkyo. And then we always kind of spend a lot of time in Ikkyo and then a lot of more time in Ikkyo, and then Sankyo we had something, and then Yonkyo we just kind of throw it very quickly and never really have time to study. So and that then becomes apparent in the grading. So let's practice a couple of basic things about Sankyo and a couple of basic things about Yonkyo, okay, in terms of how to do it. If you have a bokken or a stick or a tool, just to grab in your hand, that would be useful. So first of all, we practice, let's say, Shoumenuchi, something that we were practicing in the beginning of this class, or the beginning of the week, was that in our school, we attack and we control the elbow of my partner with both hands, as opposed to what happens sometimes, which is the wrist and the elbow. In our case, both hands and spine and body are behind the elbow. Okay, so let's assume that we are kind of here behind the elbow. Okay, now we cut. Exactly with the spine. So far, so good. It's the same as it. Now we change base. Okay, so that's the first important thing. So once we have the control, okay, we change base. Okay, second, we Sankyo Gogi. Okay, which is we row. We use the body. We not only push, but we row the body. One. Okay, now let's just fix those three little things first. Enter, both hands on the elbow, Tai Savaki, change base, and row. Okay, one more time. Elbow, Tai Savaki, control, change base, and row. One more. Enter, Tai Savaki, change base, and row. Okay. A couple of things important when we do any exercise where we have to change base. It's very important to change base without losing control of the part of the body that we are working with. So in this case, we enter, we cut. I am going to change base in this moment, but if I'm not careful, changing base will be the equivalent of me losing control and then trying to regain control. So as much as possible, it's important to have control and change base with my hips down, as opposed to losing control and regaining control. So there is no loss of control, if possible. If possible, you are down in this position, and with your hips down, you change base one side. With your hips down, you change base the other side. With your hips down, you change base one side. With your hips down, you change base the other side. Again, what happens is I need to change base, so I go up and then I go down. I go up and then I go down. And when we go up, we lose control. So ideally not. Ideally keep your hips down. Okay? So enter, control, change base, okay, and row. Okay? A little thing with the rowing, remember, if you row up, that is a very jumpy person, very agile person, that person may go up. If you row towards them and down, you will keep them more off balance in that moment, and it will be more awkward for them to move. How you row down or you row up, it's a little bit depending who are you working with, how much space you want to give them. But just consider that once you're here, you can row up, to do your next change. But sometimes that means people get up, or you can row towards them down, which means you push the arm towards them. The whole can becomes more awkward, and they scramble a little bit more on the floor. So depending how you're working with. Okay, so let's get into that part. But before we get into that part, just something that may be more or less useful when practicing with the bokken. Remember, with the bokken, usually traditionally you have, this basic grip, hands, space, hands, right? So that's the basic grip of the bokken. But usually that's where the handle ends up. So that's where you have hand, there is empty space, and then there is hand. That is useful sometimes to remember and to practice how your hand works. Basically, dividing the handle in three spots. Hand, empty hand, hand. So it's three spots on the handle. Your hand can have three spots: fingers, hand, wrist. Okay, so fingers, hand, wrist. So in this case, the top is going to be the wrist. That will be the hand. The bottom will be the fingers. So you kind of more or less think about that in the handle. Okay, the top will be the wrist, the middle will be the hand, the bottom will be the fingers. So fingers, hands, wrist. Okay, so what's going to happen now is we're going to focus only on the wrist level, not on the hand level and not on the finger levels, only on the wrist level. Okay, so you enter, you control, you change base, You do your Sankyo Gogi, up or down, however you want. Now, one hand is at the wrist level. The other hand is going to change also at the wrist level. Okay? So you Sankyo Gogi up, wrist to wrist. Changes the control. Okay? So from that position then, goes omote. You're going to step in, lower your hips first, and then, okay, so in the second part of the exercise, let's focus to move from wrist to wrist, from wrist to wrist, okay, on the controlling of the bokken. And then to finish, we're going to lower our hips first, move our legs second, okay, lower. So, enter, control, change base, Sankyo Gogi, move from wrist to wrist, move stepping in, lowering the hips, moving the hips. Okay. So up, control, change base without losing too much control, rowing, Sankyo, changing from wrist to wrist. Enter, low, moving the foot. Inside, up, down, control, change base, Sankyo Gogi, from wrist to wrist, enter, lower, and one more, up, control, change base, Sankyo Gogi, from wrist to wrist, enter, lower, and move. Okay, so the very last thing, and this is at the beginning and at the end, is in this analogy of your bokken being in your handle being wrist, hand, finger. Somewhere in the middle of the bokken is the elbow, and somewhere at the end of the bokken is the shoulder head. So, whenever you work with your bokken in practicing katamewasas, it's useful to kind of more or less visualize it that way. The top is the shoulder or the head, the middle of the bokken is the elbow, and then the handle is divided into wrist, hand, fingers. So in that way, you know more or less what are you grabbing equivalent, to that. So just at the beginning of the exercise, when you control, what is the shoulder must be pointing down, not sideways. Okay, remember that's the shoulder head, so that should be pointing down. The more you point down, the easier it is to do the change in a way. Okay, and then, okay, once you do your extension, you change wrist to wrist, you stand up, you control the elbow, you lower, and then you move your foot. At the moment when we finish here, is the same thing. The tip of the bokken should be touching the floor. Okay, should be touching the floor because that's the shoulder head. In here, there is obviously the different oshimai. Okay, the traditional oshimai just goes down. You change your hands, you hug, and then you move towards the head. Okay, but the other oshimai that we do, which Moreno says is favoring more at the moment, is the standing up oshimai, not going to your knee. So just stay forward, grabbing the arm and leveraging. Okay, and leverage forward. So if this is done correctly, the head is down, the shoulder is pinned to the ground, and now you are grabbing the shoulder and the arm, moving towards the head in order to use the pushing. Okay, so anyway, please remember, tip of the bokken is the head, shoulder of your partner, so that you always be down, touching the floor as early as possible. Okay, so let's see if we can now put all of that together. Up, hands together on the elbow, control. Okay, head of the partner is down. Change base, down, Sankyo Gogi, from wrist to wrist, stepping in, lowering the hips, opening back, head is down, moving in, and applying Oshimai. Good side, open, down, change, Sankyo Gogi, changing wrist to wrist, stepping down, controlling, sliding forward, Oshimai. Okay. So that's this is all we have. We spend a lot of time in Sankyos or Yonkyos, and Sankyo, we get to Yonkyo and we never have time to practice Yonkyo properly. So anyway, so there's quite a few pointers in there on Sankyo. Possibly at the moment, the most urgent one is to remember to row, and remember to row, to do the Sankyo Gogi. That's important, very important. And the second one will be to remember that we are transferring in basic form from wrist to wrist, from wrist to wrist. Okay. Sometimes people use his hand, to create leverage, and then sometimes we could use fingers and extend, to transfer. But basic one is to know that it goes from wrist to wrist. Okay, so that basic change in Sankyo for Waza. Mano Sensei, as we know, that he will not grab the hand. He will never grab the hand. He will sometimes grab the fingers as a form of leverage. So we just need to keep being attentive of his teaching and just seeing what he's emphasizing in a particular day. But basic from wrist to wrist, and then if he uses fingers for leverage, then use fingers for leverage. Okay. So now with Yonkyo, okay, with Yonkyo, basically it's a very similar. It's a very similar thing, except for one thing. Like a couple of things. Just remember that again, it's more or less useful to have your bokken. Remember that your Sankyo, is something that just grabs naturally as the bokken comes to the side, from wrist to wrist, just from side to side. Okay, Yonkyo, okay. In Yonkyo, this is the normal grab of Sankyo, which is the normal gripping of the sword. Yonkyo, the hand kind of faces a little bit more towards the point that you're going to be controlling. So Sankyo grip, Yonkyo grip, Sankyo grip, Yonkyo grip. So this little alignment just of the hand, which goes from Sankyo to Yonkyo, from Sankyo, where the palm of my hand is facing that way, to Yonkyo, where the palm of my hand is facing that way. So it's that way or that way. So that's eventually an important te sabaki difference between Sankyo and Yonkyo. So Sankyo, Yonkyo, Sankyo, Yonkyo. Okay? Because then what will happen in that Yonkyo, even in the bokken, that grip here is called Yonkyo no Katachi. Okay? Kihon no Katachi, Yonkyo no Katachi. There are two different ways of grabbing even the sword. So once we identify the Yonkyo no Katachi, okay, remember the most important thing is going to be to cut. Okay, so the cut and the control is the most important thing of the Yonkyo, not the not so much the pinching on the nerve that makes Yonkyo so characteristic. The pinching of the nerve is an element which may or may not be present in the technique, but it's not the most important element. The most important element is control. It's a katame waza. It's the control of your partner's body through their arm is the most important thing. Okay, so let's just practice those two basic things. Sankyo grip and then Yonkyo grip. Okay, Sankyo grip on the side, Yonkyo grip on the top. Sankyo grip on the side, Yonkyo grip on the top. Now, with that Yonkyo grip, raise your bokken. Okay, it should not hit anything, and cut down. Okay, and make sure that you really use your spine to cut. Okay, so that's possibly the most important thing. The most important thing is that in the Yonkyo, it needs to be very determined that cut immediately. Okay, so the position of the hand and the intensity of the cut. So if we do those things together, let's say Shogunuchi, control and control the person. Change base, extend up, grab as Yonkyo no Katachi, up and cut down. Okay, if it's a standing technique, then you move the foot inside really deep into your plantar and you use your body as leverage. Okay, one more time, up, cut, change, Yonkyo gogi, so rowing, Yonkyo no Katachi grip, make space, up and cut. Okay, moving in, body and leverage. Okay. To the side, up, cutting. Change your base. Yonkyo gogi, so rowing up. Change into Yonkyo grip, up and cut. Side, up, cut, change base, Yonkyo up, entering with your palm facing the bokken, not sideways to the bokken, palm facing the bokken, grabbing up and cut. More, cut, change base, Yonkyo gogi, make space, enter facing the jaw, bokken, sorry, up and one more time, up, down, change base, row, interfacing the bokken, up and okay. So with Yonkyo, please remember that there is the difference between Sankyo grip, Yonkyo grip, Sankyo grip, Yonkyo grip. Okay, and once that grip is established, usually if that is proficient, that's where the base of our index finger sometimes falls in the correct spot of your partner's forearm, and that's where you go, ah, it hurts, you know. But again, that's not really relevant to this point. It's just build that grip, raising up, and then a good, solid, firm, convincing cut, you know, down with the action. That what makes a good Kihon Wasa Jonkyo, okay, in that sense. Otherwise, we think that a good Kihon Wasa Jonkyo is how much we find that little nerve, and then we throw the baby out with the water because we lose all chance of control of my partner. So, okay, hopefully we can practice a few of those details, and we can make our Kihon, Jonkyo, and Sankyo better progressively. One physical exercise in both cases is my capacity to row, to transfer my weight from one to the other. Our most common rowing exercise, as we know, is this funakogi, but you know, that rowing, transferring of weight from one side to the other one exists on Nikyo, Sankyo, Jonkyo, okay, at least. So let's just finish off with Kokyu Dosa with a little bit of rowing. So open your legs, lower your hips, lower with one side and the other side, one side, the other side. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay. So, hey, shut. Hey, hey, hey. Arigato gozaimashita.